Donald Trump's invasion of Illinois on hold, a federal judge Thursday saying she sees little evidence of rebellion on the streets in and around Chicago. 500 troops, 200 from Texas, 300 from Illinois, began their patrol Thursday, but U.S. District Judge April Perry accusing Homeland Security of providing her with unreliable assessments of how violent the protests actually are. These troops are expected now to stand down. A written ruling is expected Friday. Trump will appeal. Judge Perry saying local police are better equipped to keep protests from turning violent, adding the presence of troops in Chicago, especially troops from Texas, quote, only adds fuel to the fire. Judge Perry noting one instance where there were 100 police officers to monitor only 200 protesters in Chicago. Judge Perry calling federal police firing pepper balls and chemical agents at protesters, quote, arbitrary and indiscriminate. Perry was appointed to the bench by Joe Biden. Eric Hamilton, the lawyer representing the Trump administration, when questioned by Judge Perry, was unable to explain what role he imagined National Guard soldiers would play in preserving the peace. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, whose arrest Donald Trump called for on Wednesday, praised the ruling, saying Trump is not a king. The day before, Governor Pritzker accused Trump of being in the advanced stages of dementia. Well, that's no way to talk about a demented person. Federal agents hit Reverend David Black of Chicago's First Presbyterian Church 7 times in the face and torso with pepper balls that dropped him to his knees, writhing in pain, while he was conducting a prayer service outside a Broadville, Illinois ICE detention center. Snipers perched atop that detention center's roof fired more shots at protesters, comforting the injured reverend who was wearing a clerical collar at the time. Reverend Black suffered non-lethal injuries, now vowing more prayers outside that ICE detention center where, right before getting shot, he ordered ICE agents to repent for their sins. During that same protest, ICE snipers also hit Hannah Cardin, a United Methodist pastor, during her prayer service. According to Reverend Black, he could hear snipers on the roof laughing as he rolled on the ground in agony. Reverend Cardin telling reporters the shots were fired with no warning, no order for protesters to disperse from what had been a designated free speech zone. Reverend Cardin saying the shots were fired out of anger, not to control what was a peaceful crowd. Director of Homeland Security Kristi Noem accusing the ministers of endangering the lives of our brave law enforcement officers. Reverend Black says he often leads chants directed at ICE agents with the words, love your neighbor, love your God, save your soul, and quit your job. Meanwhile, church attendants reportedly plunging in immigrant communities for fear of arrest, with ICE agents raiding at least 10 houses of worship this year. That's according to Jack Jenkins reporting for the Religious News Service. America's 53 million Catholics forced to choose now between Trump and the Pope. Chicago-born Leo XIV ordering bishops Wednesday to condemn ICE's mass deportations, family separations, and violence against women, children, and protesters. This after Leo's September 30th admonition that being pro-life also includes protecting migrants. On Wednesday, the Pope emphasized Trump's immigration policy violates centuries of Catholic doctrine. According to last November's exit polls, Trump carried the Catholic vote by nearly 60%, a 7% spike over his 2020 performance against Catholic Joe Biden, who pretty much split the American Catholic vote with Trump. The Vatican has been bumping up against conservative American Catholics in and out of the church for some time now. 2 years ago, Pope Francis stripped ultra-right-wing Bishop Joseph Strickland of his leadership in Tyler, Texas, due to Strickland's accusation that Catholic charities harbored criminals by accepting federal money to assist Central American migrants. Pope Francis also disapproved of Strickland's comments attacking the LGBTQ community. Republicans want Christian leaders to pick sides during elections. During his first and second term, Trump ordered the Internal Revenue Service not to enforce the Johnson Amendment, a law stripping a religious organization's tax-free status if it endorses a political candidate. It's why Christian leaders like Franklin Graham officially or unofficially endorsed Trump without having to worry about losing their tax-free status. The Vatican refuses to take sides in elections. Donald Trump's invasion of Oregon remains on hold after judges from the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals are still reviewing a lower court order blocking Trump from deploying the Oregon, the California, or any other National Guard to the streets of Portland. Oral arguments Thursday held before 3 judges, one appointed by Clinton, the other 2 by Trump, suggesting that the court could rule in Trump's favor. The 2 Trump appointees expressing concern that Portland's mayor and Oregon's governor not displaying sufficient deference to the president. Eric MacArthur, the lawyer for the Trump administration, arguing that protesters have turned violent by spitting on ICE officers, blocking vehicles, and once lighting a small fire outside the detention facility. Kristi Noem, Director of Homeland Security, back from Wednesday's surprise visit to Portland, telling Trump Thursday that the governor of Oregon and mayor of Portland are, quote, protecting terrorists. Noem telling the president protesters taunt ICE agents with calls to, quote, melt ice. She said Portland police cheered as protesters screamed, kill ICE. Trump continues to describe Portland as a war-ravaged city, despite the protests being low-key and primarily peaceful, of course, until federal agents show up with tear gas. Portland City Council is comprised of 12 members, all Democrats, 4 of whom are Democratic Socialists of America. In the past year, the number of homicides in Portland plummeted by more than 50%, the sharpest decline of any major American city, or as Trump calls it, a war zone. New York State Attorney General Leticia James indicted for mortgage fraud. As newly appointed U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsey Halligan, Trump's former defense lawyer with no experience as a prosecutor, takes on the president's enemies less than 2 weeks after securing an indictment against former FBI Director James Comey, charging him with lying before Congress. Last year, Leticia James secured a $500 million judgment against Trump after a judge ruled Trump had defrauded banks and lenders. That ruling, along with another ruling dismissing the $500 million fine, are all being appealed. New York State Attorney General James, back in 2019, also settled a lawsuit with then-President Donald Trump, who agreed to pay a fine and promised never to establish any charitable foundation after Leticia James charged him with ripping off donors to his previous one. Leticia James, indicted Thursday, accused of bank fraud and filing false documents when securing 2 homes, one in Virginia and the other, according to the indictment, in Brooklyn, New Jersey. That's right, Brooklyn, New Jersey, but the home is in Brooklyn, New York. The New York Times reporting Lindsey Halligan, the new Trump appointee, replaced a career prosecutor who refused to indict James or Comey, insisting there was insufficient evidence of any crime. The new prosecutor, Lindsey Halligan, third runner-up in the 2010 Miss Colorado pageant, is a law school graduate, but her filings against Comey were littered with misspellings, clerical errors, and the humiliation of not knowing how to address the judge. The brevity of both the Comey and James indictments suggest Lindsey Halligan is afraid to commit whatever legal prowess she possesses into words. Lindsey Graham threatening to, quote, sue the crap out of special counsel Jack Smith after the FBI unsealed records this week showing Graham's phone records on and before January 6, 2021, had been subpoenaed by the January 6th prosecutor who was looking into what role members of Congress played in the attack on our nation's capital. Senator Graham's phone records, but not the actual contents of the calls, were reviewed by prosecutors to determine who Graham and other Senate Republicans like Mike Lee of Utah and Tommy Tuberville of Alabama were talking to inside the Oval Office right before the worst attack on our nation's capital since the War of 1812. Legal experts say prosecutors often subpoena telecommunication metadata to study patterns that suggest whether or not people have conspired to commit a crime like January 6th. So Special Counsel Smith wasn't doing anything outside the law. On September 8th, 2023, an Atlanta grand jury voted 13-7 to indict Senator Lindsey Graham over his calls to Georgia officials urging them to overturn that state's 2020 election results. Fani Willis, the prosecutor at the time, chose not to act on the grand jury's recommendation.